Welcome back, everybody. Today's video is going to be the second edition of the Facet to Facet, which one to choose. And today we are going to be featuring agility heroes. You know, I'm a carry player myself, so a lot of the heroes I like to play, their agility. And so hopefully I'm going to be the specialist you guys can all look to for these facets. Let's go ahead, without further ado, get started. First and foremost, we have Anti-mage. So for Anti-mage, he has made it so his counterspell no longer automatically reflects the spell. It blocks it, but it does not reflect it. So one of his facets now reflects it. And his other facet makes it so that he gains bonus attack damage when an enemy hero within 2500 range has less than 60% mana. So basically, he becomes Bloodseeker for your mana. Seems really good in theory, but you only get it based on the level of your ultimate, which means you're not getting it in lane, which I would say is the majority of the game where this hero runs into damage issues. And I'm thinking about like 70 attack damage, right? Like maybe it pays off, but how often is Anti-mage having issues bringing people down? Usually if he's burning their mana, then we're good to go. And the fact that you're not counterspelling anymore or like reflecting the spell feels pretty bad to me. But what I'll say is pretty simple. I think if they have meaningful spells to reflect, like hexes, like single target stuns that are also reliable, then I would probably go for this facet. Otherwise, I would go for this facet. Now keep in mind, they've made it so that reflected spells since then now deal 20% extra damage. So they're trying to make the Mage Bane's Mirror a little bit more enticing, but I definitely think this is a situational facet choice depending on the spells that the opponent has. Next up, we have Warden. So it's Warden and Tempest Double have their respective ability effects. So basically, they always made it so that Warden could be certain Warden on Radiant and Dire. Like, it was different which one was which. And now they've made it so you can choose which one is which based on your facets. So basically, this just boils down to Warden specialists understanding like which one they want to control in the laning phase and which one is predominantly more impactful about their clone. But at the end of the day, neither of these is better than the other. It's just understanding which situation you choose each. We got Bloodseeker. So he's got two facets. Rupture, which is when they are ruptured, when you attack them, it pushes them 50 units back. If we look at Rupture's damage, at max level, it's 55% damage. That means if we move them 50 units, they will take 27.5 pure damage. That feels kind of mediocre. It is pure damage, and we have to consider that you are displacing them potentially, but I feel like half the time, kind of like Sniper's Headshot, you're like pushing them away from your team, which kind of feels bad or something. So very situational. And the other one is can be activated to grant 50% movement speed burst from thirst for 5 seconds. So basically, for the 10 seconds that you don't have this, you are not getting anything from thirst. So I think this could be really useful for chasing people down for kills, whether it's early game or whether or not it's like beginning of a team fight, towards the end of a team fight. I personally think this has a lot of utility. And I think that you can pick and choose when you want to be fast or not and like activate it with your BKB for 5 seconds. So I personally think this Blood Rush one is personally way better because the damage on this is just underwhelming. If they made it so that like you got pushed 50 units and took 50 damage or something like that, then this could be more viable. But I feel like right now 27 pure damage on the target that's ruptured is just underwhelming as a whole. Next up, we got Bounty Hunter. So for Bounty Hunter, we have the Shuriken damage and slows all units it passes through. And the other one is Cut Purse, which Bounty Hunter steals this much gold every time he targets a hero with a spell. I think this one's pretty straightforward. Do you need wave clear or do you not? Largely about core Bounty Hunter. So Shuriken does decent damage. You see here it's 310 damage. This lets you clear creep waves. This is an issue Bounty Hunter has always had. I haven't gotten the chance to try him as a core, but I think if you want to play Bounty Hunter core, you absolutely need this one. You absolutely need it because at the end of the day, good players will group up against you and it just sucks and then you can't clear waves. And so now with Cut Purse, you're more of a support, chasing people down, tracking them, being annoying. So I would definitely lean towards core on the left, support on the right. Next up, we got Clinkz. His first facet is Suppressive Fire, which makes it so that enemies hit by attacks from strafe get a debuff that causes them to miss 5% of their attacks. It stacks from each skeleton and Clinkz, and they expire 1 second after the strafe duration has concluded. So it also applies to buildings. And then it also makes your attack range from strafe 100 more. And the other one makes it so that when he death packs, Clinkz takes the place of the consumed unit. Can be really useful for closing the gap on people, but it can also kind of grief you because it can't be toggled off, which is kind of annoying. Like in lane, if you want to use it, half the time you don't want Clinkz to be in the middle of the creep wave. So I feel like this one's pretty situational at best. Maybe okay for mid because you're like willing to man up against the person at certain times. I wouldn't use it in side lane Clinkz. So this one seems overall better, but maybe for mid Clinkz, this one would be nice. Kind of similar to how Arc Warden's clone now spawns away from him to kill people with. You can do something similar with this. And obviously like mid to late game, you can maybe use it to get out of like cogs or something like this. So maybe in specific matchups as well, Engulfing Step could be useful. Next up, we got Drow, whose first facet is called Vantage Point. Says deals 20% more damage with attacks from high ground. That also includes her shard. So overall, just 20% damage with her shard and defending high ground. And also Drow likes to fight on high ground. So seems like an overall decent facet. And I would say that maybe even makes Drow mid viable. Maybe I'll try Drow mid at some point with this. But she is very gankable, which is kind of a problem. And the next one is Sidestep, which Drow Ranger can use items and move during multi-shot with a 40% movement speed penalty. This one feels really good. It just feels like a nice quality of life buff because a lot of times you're just a sitting duck when you're using multi-shot. So I would say overall, both of these have uses. One's more like I do the same amount of damage, but I'm more mobile. And the other one is I do way more damage with just right clicks. So are you more of a multi-shot hero that game, or are you more of a stand your ground right-click hero? I think multi-shot goes up in value when they don't have illusions or like multiple units. Like you want to just hit heroes with these arrows. As weird as it sounds, I think this would be better if you don't need to AoE clear. And this one's generally better if you're just right-clicking a lot. Next, we got Ember Spirit, who's got double impact. When connecting with 2 or more enemies, the enemy closest to Ember Spirit will be attacked a second time with damage reduced by 40%. So basically 1.6x crit on the first guy you attack, or closest guy you attack if there are 2 people, which is honestly, as I read it, it's like very specific and it's hard to pull off reliably. On the other hand, you have Chain Gang, which when Searing Chains are cast, they also cast around each Fire Remnant. So I've seen people just send out Remnants and then chain somebody, which is an even less committal way to than Sleight of Fisting. It has longer cast range as well. So a target will not be hit by chains for multiple sources, but then the unit count of chains also goes up to 4. I think this one's just too good. I don't know what else to say other than this one's just too good. So right now, I think it's like 90-10, maybe even 95-5 to take this one. Chain Gang just seems to have too much utility. I think it would even be good without this. Like, without this, it's probably still better. And the fact that it has this makes it insanely better, because most of the time on mid, for instance, you kill 1 creep, like of the wave, and then there's only 3 creeps left, and you guaranteed Searing Chains the enemy hero. That seems pretty strong. Faceless Void. The first one that keeps Faceless Void the exact same as he was before, except that after Time Walk, he has an extra 1 second of backtracking all damage. So basically, you know, 3 seconds of reducing damage rather than 2. So that's just a nice buff to standard Faceless Void. And the other one, we got Time Zone in the zone. So it does pierce spell immunity now, or debuff immunity. It says it here that it doesn't, but they recently buffed it so that it does. At the end of the day, it leashes you, but you can use Yule Scepter. You can use like haste movement speed on heroes like Weaver. I still think Time Zone has utility in certain games, but you're more likely to have to buy a nullifier. You're more likely to want to use it if your teammates are melee and wouldn't be able to do damage through Chrono. So I almost feel like this is just a completely different ability because it buffs you and your teammates up. So it's a lot about if you have like a melee brawling lineup, maybe you're not afraid to pick Faceless Void and pick Time Zone. And the fact that it now pierces debuff immunity, I think it's definitely viable. I think this is just largely due with, do you have ranged guys that dump damage into Chrono? Or do you have melee guys that get the fuck in there and it feels like it's really hard to Chrono without griefing your teammates? Gyrocopter. The first one is called, that I'm going to talk about, is Afterburner, which makes it so every time Gyrocopter hits a enemy hero, that was a nerf that it received, with Rocket Barrage, he gets buffed with movement speed, and it refreshes when you use the next Rocket Barrage. So you could technically chain these, but it's really difficult now that you have to use it on enemy heroes, and it's hard to get those stacks up without just dying. As core, it feels okay because you're in the middle of the fray. As support, not so much. So I'd say this is largely only for core now, because support is just difficult to be that close to heroes all the time. But for support, it makes it so every time you hit somebody with a call down missile, another call down missile goes on them and deals 50% of the damage. That is also like a tracking missile, so you kind of know where they're going. It's nice utility, honestly. I'd say mainly mid game, because mid to late game, or like past the mid game more into the late game, it's difficult to get call down reliably off. People usually have BKBs at that point as well. So I would just largely say that this is for support utility. This is for core because this one just isn't relevant enough for core. Hoodwink, pretty straightforward. They removed the no longer increases attack and cast range by default on Scurry, and then they put it on her Facet. And that was an incredibly important part of her kit because her Acorn Shot benefits from attack range and cast range. So now you're just getting like 400 when you use it, which is insane. So basically, we're going to keep this one short. Can't afford to pass this one up. I don't really like when they do this to heroes. Like, they literally need this to be functional. So I'm not even going to read this one to you because it would have to be God tier to replace this one. Next, we got Jug or not. Okay, we do have Jug. Sorry, terrible joke. So first one is Blade Fury can now deal critical damage with the same stats as Blade Dance. So an extra 35% damage on Blade Fury, effectively, on average. While Blade Form is all about gaining a stack of 2% base agility, they've nerfed it, and 1% move speed, and it lingers for 2 seconds. They've also nerfed that as well. So basically, this one was free shit, which is really nice. Constantly up. You do get like 5-6 agility in the laning stage, you know, 15 movement speed here and there, and you can use it effectively for trading. I think this one still has a large amount of viability, but I'd say it's probably 60-40. Just kind of depends if you think you're going to be able to lock onto heroes with Blade Fury. Because this one's really nice mid to late game when you have like Swift Blink, Ags, Omni Slash, and you come out of a smoke gank with an extra 25 agility. And that just makes your Omni Slash hurt like a motherfucker. So I think it's largely to do with how likely you're going to be in the fray Blade Furying and hitting heroes with it. Next, we have Luna, whose shard got reworked last patch, so kind of keep that in mind. Her first facet is while active, because Moonglaves already has an active by default, also reduces incoming damage. And then they also made it so Aghanim Shard increases the rotating glaive. So Aghanim Shard basically buffs this up, but the only way to get reduced damage is to have the facet. So I think Luna got hit pretty hard by this patch for this reason. She's kind of the same as Hoodwink. Take something away and then give it back to her in a facet when a lot of other heroes got free shit from a facet. And the other one is Moonstorm, which is she gains attack damage bonus, which is like her old shard every time an enemy hero is hit by Lucent Beam. This includes Lucent Beams from Eclipse. This feels like more of a support thing, but then support doesn't right click. So I feel like you take this one every time as a core, and I don't even know when this one would be useful. So overall, what's nice about this is she gets it in the laning phase, like as opposed to having to wait till she buys a shard, she gets the damage reduction. But yeah, it feels pretty bad overall. Like, I think you have to take this one though. I think you just have to. The shard giving damage reduction in the past was what made Luna a viable late game carry. 25% damage reduction is a lot. So I just can't really fathom when you would take this one. Next, we got Medusa. So the first one is called Engorged. I can think of something that's engorged right now. This video content, because it's so good. Mystic Snake. Whenever a Mystic Snake returns to Medusa, her next 3 attacks deal additional 1 physical damage per 6 mana restored. So overall, just free damage. It applies in the laning phase as well, which is nice. She engorges herself with her snake. And the other one is Mana Pact, which they've buffed it so it takes less of your mana, 3%, but it basically increases her attack speed by 3% per second while draining her mana, so effectively killing herself. It's kind of like Bloodseeker's Blood Rage, where you're like buffing up your attack speed while killing yourself, but unlike Bloodseeker, who has like health gain from killing people and creeps and stuff, Medusa doesn't really have reliable ways of getting mana back, so I feel like this one's just really bad, and this one's just free shit, so I take free shit every time, and I like when my snake engorges me. Next up, we got Meepo. So this one gives you an extra Meepo, basically. And it's important to note that they've nerfed it so that the clones with this facet only get 85% damage. So you get an earlier clone, and you also only get 85% damage. So this one was clearly broken because they nerfed it. While the other one, which is Pack Rat, which was his old talent, which is Meepo can equip any item in the neutral item slot with the exception of boots and items that are dropped on death, like Rapier. Meepo's clones gain full bonuses from the item. So I had a Meepo in my game who went mid-game Eternal Shroud and just put it on his backpack Pack Rat slot, and he effectively has like a pipe aura on all of his Meepos. So I think it's pretty broken in theory with certain items in certain games. So there's certain broken combos where if they have predominantly magic damage for Eternal Shroud, these are things to consider. But it does have a lot of clunky interactions. I was reading a Reddit thread about this, how like Mjolnir, MKB don't proc. Basher doesn't proc. So in theory, this one could be broken, but just remember that it is balanced around certain items like not proccing and stuff. Don't quote me on exactly how it works, but if you want to take this one, definitely do your research on which items work which way and go into the game with an idea of like how you're going to abuse it. For all the Meepo players out there, because we hate you Smurf players. Next up, we got Monkey King, which he's got Wukong's Faithful. Soldiers disperse after 3 seconds if Monkey King gets out of the formation or dies. So his basically against like displacement spells like swap, skewer, stuff like this, it's really important because you can walk out of your ult or get thrown out of your ult and walk back in within 3 seconds. And even if you don't get back into your ult, it still lasts for 3 seconds, which is just nice. And you guys all know about how lasting for 3 seconds is. So it's a nice amount of time, longer than usual for you. Simian Stride has no cooldown while Monkey King is full health. So they've buffed this so that it's 90% HP. So you can take like 1 or 2 hits from creeps or and hero maybe and still be able to have no cooldown. So overall, I think this is more of a support thing, but it also is really nice for core if you don't need the buffer from displacement. So I'd say this is largely if they have heroes that can reliably take you out of Wukong's. Otherwise, you take this one. I think it really is that simple now since they've buffed this one. So that cores who are getting hit by creeps are still going to be high enough HP to have the no cooldown. Morphling. Basically, Morphling is the same hero as before, which is Ebb, kind of cutely named, and Flow, which turns him into a strength hero. They've buffed this a bunch of times. Super fucking confusing. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I haven't seen a single Morphling. I don't know what the fuck's going on. They're probably going to buff this shit like 9 times before you watch this video. So just keep in mind that I've raised my voice because I'm slightly hysterical because I don't know what to say about this. But just keep in mind that it's probably going to be broken at some point. Right now, nobody has any clue what the fuck's going on with it. Turns his main attribute into a strength, and I don't understand. So if you want to flow, go with the flow, yo. I'm out. I'm into the next hero. Doe. Okay. Naga. Let's keep this very simple. Old Riptide, current Riptide. Carry, support. Fantastic. PA. So Blur no longer grants evasion and no longer makes her invisible. Basically, Blur got significantly changed, and so one of her facets makes it so that Blur is no longer dispelled when she attacks. While Blur is active, all mana costs are reduced by 30%. After Blur is dispelled, all abilities and items have no mana cost for 5 seconds. So just an overall, like, they made her less annoying by making her not invisible, and you also can no longer attack out of Blur by default, so you can't kill creeps and come out of Blur. But with this, you can, so you have that back, but you're not invisible. People just see you, but they can't target you. That's what's happening. And all these things seem kind of nice. On the other hand, you have Methodical that, remember, you no longer can attack while you're blurred anymore. So that just kind of fucking sucks. They've buffed the damage on this since, but overall, it just feels like unless they buff this insane amounts, it's never going to be worth not being able to clear creeps and such with Blur active. So hard to imagine this one being worth. I'm sticking to the Veiled one for now, unless this one gets significantly buffed. PL, Convergence. Spawns an additional illusion per 25% health that Phantom Lancer is missing. Pretty standard, same hero, but Doppelganger's a little bit better. Divergence, though. Illusions are uncontrollable from your ult. All your other illusions are controllable, like Manta, Lance, all that kind of stuff, and your Doppelganger. Can spawn on any visible unit within a 700 radius of the attack target, prioritizing targets without juxtaposed illusions already attacking them. They can perform Phantom Rush and change targets once the original one is dead. If there are no valid targets, illusions disappear. This is important because you can't, like, kill a creep wave and then send illusions to, like, down the lane just to scout for a few seconds, to go hit a tower, to go hit the next wave, to go hit the next creep camp. It's kind of annoying, but honestly, they made it so that the illusions did an extra 6% damage, which is honestly like 30% damage if you consider like how much more it is from before. The thing is that they nerfed this. They nerfed it by 2% at all levels, so it's now 22, 24, 26. So now it's like a 20% buff, 25%. I would say that this one was better on release, but I'm leaning more towards this one now. It also makes Phantom Lancer, it makes it like really hard to focus targets in fights because you just have like one illusion hitting everybody instead of like summoning 4 illusions from Juxtapose and sending them on a support in a fight, which is like super annoying. So I'm leaning towards Convergence now, but it's honestly a really close call and gonna need some toying with a bit, fiddling with before I can engorge my snake. Wait, what? Next, we got Razor, which is Storm Surge. When Eye of the Storm is active, Storm Surge proc chance is doubled and procs with additional immediately strike all enemies within the Eye of the Storm radius, which is not very large. It's like 400 or 500. Can't strike the same enemy twice per proc. This one's incredibly situational and seems decent in theory, maybe against like PL or something, or like Naga. But overall, this one just seems way better, which is Dynamo. Razor gains 1% spell amp for every 20 points of attack damage. Remember that he has Plasma Field. He has Eye of the Storm. These are both spells that do damage, like relevant damage. A lot of this hero's damage is spell damage, and he gets more damage as he's like linking you and stuff. Like mid-game, he's already by default got 5% spell amp because he just hits for like 100 without link going. So mid to late game, you could be hitting for 300-400 damage. That's 15-20% spell amp. That's no joke, honestly, on a hero that uses spells and is not only a right clicker. So I would almost certainly take Dynamo unless I'm against maybe PL or Naga or CK perhaps. CK probably kills you too fast, so probably not this one against CK. Riki. We got Contract Killer. Riki gets bonus experience for kills and bonus experience for assists based on the current level of backstab. They removed that, so basically giving him what he used to have. And then this one has been buffed, Exterminator, which is agility bonus is multiplied by 4, because it's been buffed, against non-hero units. This is basically core Riki. Like, you can go Ags, you clear creep waves instantly. How good is it? I'm not sure. I've always wondered about core Riki because he just doesn't end the game. So this allows you to clear creep waves really nicely, but is that good enough? So I'd just say if I'm core, I'm definitely taking this one. At least carry. If I'm carry, I'm taking this one. If I'm any other role, I'm probably taking this one, but I'm not even sure about this one, to be honest. Because I think Riki's never had an issue killing people. It's always been like, how does this hero farm? How does he scale? So for carry, I'm definitely taking this one. Otherwise, you maybe take this one. SF. His two facets are Lasting Presence, Presence of the Dark Lord. For every enemy hero killed nearby, Presence of the Dark Lord further reduces armor by 2. They buffed this for 70 seconds. So they've nerfed Shadowmire to be for 8% movement speed rather than 10% movement speed. Honestly, I think this one's like way too good in lane. Like this one applies later, which is nice and all, but it's just too situational. We've talked about uptimes of facets. Like this is only after you've killed an enemy hero nearby or they've been dead near you. So it's like, this one, on the other hand, is every time you raise somebody, which in the laning stage, you're going to raise them like 20 times, unless you're noob. So if you're a noob, take this one. Or if you're doing OD Pixels no raise build, take this one. Otherwise, I think this one's just way too good and always better. Slarky Malarkey. The first one makes... So first off, Pounce no longer gets Essence Shift stacks by default. Now, instead of the old 0, 1, 2, 3, his Pounce gives 1, 2, 3, 4. Seems really necessary, in my opinion, for Slark to be functional as a hero. The other one, Dark Reef Renegade, when revealed by enemies, his ult regen and move speed still lingers if teammate of his is not within, been buffed, 1,000 units. It's 1,000 units. It's been buffed since then. TLDR is that this one is super situational and I have to like concern myself with being away from my teammates, which feels like shit. I don't feel like it's reliable. I could even be banking on it and then have my teammate blink in, you know? Which it's hard to fault them for blinking in. So this one just seems like trash. I wish they would just like lower the lingering duration and not do this. Like this one just seems so clunky. I hate it in theory. I'm a Slark player, so I'm going to be passionate. I fucking hate this one. I just want to like, if I could punch my screen without breaking my computer, I'd punch this right here. So I take this one 100% of the time. Sniper. While active, Sniper isn't revealed in Fog of War. Cool. The other one is that the duration of shrapnel is decreased by 1 second instead of 10, and the damage is multiplied by 4. So they've also buffed it so that the activation time of this shrapnel version, the scatter shot, is lower. I initially thought this was the literal worst facet in the entire game, but then I had a sniper on my team, safe lane, that said, with a blood grenade plus his 3 shrapnels, we can get a first blood on anybody. And he was right. So in lane, this is pretty scary. I think specifically for safe lane sniper who goes early Maelstrom for wave clear, and then shrapnel is purely like a nuke for fights. Like it's no longer a wave clear or stack clearing or farming option. It's only for fights. This is really good, actually. But it just changes the hero's conceptual kit entirely. So if you're not ready for that change, take this one. Spectre. They've buffed Forsaken to deal 60%. They went from 40 to 50 in A, 50 to 60 in B, if the target has a non-hero unit allies within range. So if that guy's by himself, this is 12 damage. Pure damage. I think that's just way too good to pass up, to be honest. 12 pure damage on any hero that doesn't have a hero within 400 units of them, which in laning stage is very common. and 12 pure damage on any hero is a lot. The other one is she casts Spectral Dagger at the current level of Haunt's target and decreases reality cooldown to 1 second. I think this one's too good, to be honest. I think this is the only one that gives her laning presence. So also just the uptime of this is way higher. So I'm going to go Forsaken as the one I would choose every time. Templar Assassin. This one makes it so that spilled enemies with side blades get slowed. Mainly useful for the laning stage, I think. Late game, you're not really hitting anybody with side blades intentionally. And then Refractor makes it so that you gain a damage instance every time a shield instance gets consumed. I think this one's just too good. I don't know what else to say. I think this one's just too good. Speeds up your farm, makes you do more damage, free shit, uptime all the time, doesn't take skill like where you're like trying to... I feel like you're going to grief yourself trying to slow somebody with side blades. And so I think this one's just too good. Terrorblade removes the minimum threshold on Sunder. Is condemned. The other one, this originally made it so that it costs you HP and mana, but then they made it so it only costs 15% of your current HP, so they buffed that, and then they made it so it also doesn't cost mana in 7.36b. So personally, for carry TB, I think this one is the go-to. My soul fragment read is that this is the go-to one, guys. I need to figure out the build. I'll keep you posted. I promise. But the fact that you can play carry TB, at least on Dire, because the HP regen in the jungle is 7 HP regen to offset this early game. You're going to need a Satanic eventually, but you usually buy that anyway. So I'm just telling you guys, I think Terrorblade's become a very different hero. We're going to be posting a video about it soon because I'm going to be toying around with this boy appropriately, consensually, and we're going to be showing you guys that soul fragment's the way to go. But if you want to play standard TB, not really worry about, change is scary, then Condemned is the more reliable one. And at the end of the day, soul fragment may just be terrible and I may be eating my foot. Troll Warlord. Let's basically say this one is 30% of his old ulti, which you don't want to use for your teammates because it makes you uncontrollable. And this one is reliable armor that you get every stack of fervor. I would take insensitive every time, and I'm not sensitive enough to the people who want to make bad influences because fuck you, this one's stupid. Ursa, probably my favorite hero in the entire game for the facets he's received, in the sense that both of them are good and both of them are very situational and powerful based on what's happening in the game. I personally think Bear Down is the overall better one. It buffs his Fury Swipe duration, his slow duration from his Q, all items like Basher, Diffusal, stuff like this, and just overall really nice utility, especially in the laning phase. Like the time duration of Fury Swipes feels noticeable. The other one is Grudge Bearer, which is that 5% of the damage you absorb during Enrage is converted to damage. So what I would say about this one is you're against a lot of AoE like Leshrac and stuff, people that aren't going to turn their spells off. This one's really nice. Otherwise, I take this one. Viper. Poison Burst. After the debuff expires, all enemies around the target and the 300 radius take damage equal to 100% of the magic damage dealt by poison attack. Cool. Damage per second and magic resistance are increased, while Viper is in Nether Toxin's area of effect. So this one's more right-click backline damage dealer. This one's more stand inside of your W and tank. So it just kind of boils down to which type of Viper you're trying to play that game. I think that's a pretty straightforward one. Weaver. TLDR, this one's way too good. This one seems cute, not good enough, even close to beating this one. This one makes Weaver absolutely broken. They have to nerf it, otherwise you're never taking this one. And that's going to wrap it up for us today with a very simple Weaver, weave in, weave out. We've done the video. That's Agility Facet Heroes. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, if you agree, disagree, things you guys have tried out, yada, yada, yada. Love to hear from you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. I already said to comment, so like and subscribe and already do the commenting that I mentioned. See you guys in the next Facet video for Intelligence Heroes.